Today, the size of the internet is roughly $2.3 trillion around the world, and that is forecast to grow to $4.2 trillion by 2016. In the US, the numbers are also pretty sizable. We're talking about roughly a $600 billion internet economy here in the US, which, by the way, is the largest around the world. And that is set to grow to $1 trillion by 2016. One of the things that is most interesting about the internet economy here in the US is how big it is relative to other pieces of the economy. So at approximately $600 billion today, that makes the internet economy the 8th largest sector of the US economy overall, and that makes it bigger than the federal government, construction, mining, or even agriculture. What's also interesting about the internet economy in the US is the rate of growth. It's growing at 6.5%, which many politicians and policymakers would love to get that kind of growth. And it's happening that here, right in our backyard, people are using it for all kinds of activities such as shopping, which are encouraging them to spend time and dollars online. We took a look specifically at what it means to US businesses, and in particular to look at small and medium-sized enterprises who are the generators of much of the growth in the US economy. And we looked over the last 3 years and found that small to medium-sized enterprises that use the internet for marketing or for sales, and we looked at their growth. It turns out that those guys are growing at 10% a year over the last 3 years, compared to companies who were not using the internet, who actually shrank at -8% over the last 3 years. And when we talk to companies who are bigger, Fortune 500 companies, say, for example, whether it's media companies or mining companies and everything in between, those companies are working really hard to figure out how to unlock the growth that's coming from the internet. Not only is the internet important to businesses, it's become incredibly important to consumers, to everybody who now takes the internet almost for granted in the same way as electricity or running water. So the question we tried to answer was, how important is it to everyday people? And what we found was that the only way to get the answer to that question was ask them what we would have to pay in order to get people to give up the internet for a year. And the numbers were pretty eye-opening. In the US, it turns out that we'd have to pay people roughly $2,500 per year to give up the internet. And then we looked at it another way and said, well, what would you give up instead of giving up the internet for a year? And the numbers were pretty eye-opening. 77% of US consumers told us they would be willing to give up chocolate. 73% said they'd be willing to give up alcohol. 69% said coffee. And even 21% said they'd be willing to give up sex. The things that consumers value most about the internet turn out to be the things that are at some level really useful, that help them run their lives more efficiently and effectively. So I think we're all familiar with search, and that's something that's become very important to finding answers to almost anything under the sun. Email, too, has become a very important part of people's existence. One that we found a little bit surprising, which was right up there with those other two, was online banking. And it just shows in the last 10 years here in the US, people have given up their checkbooks, and they're now paying bills. They're not getting statements through the mail anymore. They're looking at them online. And it's something which people value very, very highly. The usage of social media. I think we're all familiar with how much time is being spent on Facebook and the huge amounts of communication that are going on across all demographics. One of the things we would look for over the next couple of years is the extent to which social media in general starts to displace some of the more traditional media, online media networks that we've seen in those areas. And so look out for, say, online commerce being conducted through social media platforms as opposed to through more traditional online retailers such as an Amazon.